After the quick introduction in French that follows, the interview is in English. Bonjour et bienvenue parmi les Digital Doers, votre podcast source d'inspiration pour les acteurs de l'innovation. Ce programme est coproduit avec Comexposium pour les événements incontournables que sont le One-to-One Retail e-commerce de Monaco et le One-to-One Digital Marketing de Biarritz. Je suis Cyril du Plessis, acteur du changement dans le digital depuis plus de 20 ans. Je donne ici la parole aux personnalités des différents écosystèmes digitaux en France. Qu'ils soient prestataires, annonceurs, marques, retailers ou pure players, ils sont des acteurs engagés dans leur business et l'innovation fait partie de leur quotidien. Source intarissable d'inspiration, je vous propose une conversation dynamique et sincère pour vous donner accès à leur retour d'expérience, leur vision et leur analyse sur les tendances et les perspectives marché. Vous êtes de plus en plus nombreux à écouter les Digital Doers et je veux vous en remercier. N'oubliez pas de vous abonner sur la plateforme d'écoute de votre choix et de voter 5 étoiles sur Apple Podcast. N'hésitez pas à laisser un petit commentaire sympa, ça fait toujours plaisir. Alors bonne écoute à vous, toujours sans coupure. This episode is part of the One-to-One Le Live, the 100% digital day in collaboration with BFM Business, and which replaces the 2020 edition of the One-to-One Retail e-commerce Monaco event which unfortunately could not be held this year due to COVID. On this occasion, I have the pleasure to welcome an influential personality of the digital world, Jan Rogers, CDO of the LVMH Group, ex-CEO of Beats Music and ex-senior director of Apple Music. Since 2015, Jan has been leading the digitalization of the world's number one of luxury brands. Like all other sectors, luxury must meet the challenges imposed by the COVID. Because the stores cannot be opened in the same conditions than in the past, the experiential approach of the retail is impacted. So it is therefore a chance to be able to discuss with Jan our three main topics of predilection. First, in the age of the COVID, who is a consumer? What are their purchasing behavior? How is the luxury market developing? Then, e-commerce and retail are adapting. What are the challenges and the market outlook for the brand of the LVMH group? And finally, we will discuss the way in which luxury advertisers can speak what type of relationships brands can or must maintain with their customers. In other words, how should clienteling be managed today? So hello Jan, thank you very much for accepting my invitation. Before starting, could you briefly describe your mission within LVMH?
Sure, hello. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
I joined the LVMH group 5 years ago, as you mentioned, and you know, as we all know, there's a bit of an innovator's dilemma going on for anyone who has been in the traditional retail space. You know, the way that we grew business over the previous 20 years, say, was building awareness through mainstream media channels, often, whether it's a magazine or out of home, and then expanding business by expanding distribution internationally, store expansion. And I think there's no denial, and it's common knowledge that business growth is going to come from building awareness online and growing both customer relationships and e-commerce online. But it's an innovator's dilemma to try to go from kind of one way of growing business to a new way. Mm-hmm. So my role is to help the organization make that transition. So I don't do that transition for them. The brands are really engaged in that. But we're tracking all of the things that are the kind of the key indicators of that growth, e-commerce revenue, but also the relationships that we build online, and looking at, what does it take to be successful? So, what technologies do we need? How do we make good use of data, artificial intelligence, machine learning along that journey, et cetera, all of the kind of the component parts. So, the Chief Digital Officer framework is about measurement. What are the KPIs that we need to look at? analysis of those KPIs, and then ultimately about making recommendations. What does good look like, and how do we get there? And then finally, some assistance in execution, because especially when it comes to acceleration, say something like a data and artificial intelligence roadmap, a brand like Dior could undertake that themselves, but there also could be some value in consolidating the way that we do that across LVMH. And those are the kinds of things that we do.
So you work closely with the brands, but you don't roll out the same roadmap with all the brands. You adapt them brand by brand, or how that works?
That's correct. I mean, you think about the scale of LVMH, and a solution that works for Sephora, may not work for Celine. I mean, they're very different in terms of their size, and we're also, we just have businesses that are very different in the way they do business. So if you look at wines and spirits versus perfumes and cosmetics versus fashion and leather goods versus hospitality, they're one solution. You're not going to find kind of one size fits all. There are some things which do apply to everyone. Everyone's using Instagram, everyone's using Akamai. Sure. There are definitely some things which are more, but those are fairly commoditized at this point. So when you're looking at something like data and artificial intelligence, what I always say is at LVMH, you're looking for kind of pockets of scale, right? Mm-hmm. So, we have similarly situated fashion brands. And I mean, really, if you're, even if you're scaling across 4 or 5 brands, it could be better than what one brand could do themselves. We have a customer care center that serves, more than 10 brands that, and so you find places where you can get benefits of the collective scale. And at LVMH, we're fortunate to have a lot of brands to choose from. So, if you have a strategy that you believe will work, you're very likely to find some place to test that theory out or that hypothesis out at LVMH. So that it's really a fantastic job. And I think the thing that is important is at LVMH, the brands are very independent, and that's important to kind of the entrepreneurial spirit at LVMH. But when it comes to digital and digital transformation, first of all, there's advantage to scale. There are some things that are just better done together, right? I mean, even if you think of the software world, we all amortize the cost of creating software or hardware even across many brands. You didn't, invent the software that you're doing the podcast with, right? It's better amortized across all of the podcasters in the world. But also, our brands they don't consider themselves, technical companies. So they actually want to take advantage of what the group has.
And is there any culture issues with the digital culture? I mean, if you are not in your DNA digital, sometimes you have to change the way you are thinking about your brands and the way you are going to address your markets. Is that an issue or a challenge?
Absolutely. I mean, but it's an issue for all of us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that both as individuals and as organizations, you are what you do. You are what you invest in, right? If you play guitar a lot, you're a guitarist. If you run a lot, you're a runner. If you watch Netflix a lot, you're a Netflix watcher, right?
Okay.
Same for organizations. If you've tooled your organization and you have 150,000 people who are the best in the world at making print advertising, opening stores, and running kind of a traditional luxury retail business, then when it's time to do something new, it's like waking up a professional football team and saying, "Hey guys, tomorrow we're going to play professional tennis."
Okay.
But I think that that's natural, and in any industrial transformation, people reinvent themselves. Some people don't, and those are the people that don't make it through, right? And new people come in, and it's just a matter of how do you do that? And part of our job as the digital team is to really try to get everyone to reinvent themselves, right?
Okay.
Because you have a workforce and you have a job to be done. Also, last year we did 8.5% of our total revenue with e-commerce, right?
Okay.
So I mean, we wouldn't want we wouldn't want to have 100% of our staff focused on e-commerce either, right? We have a traditional business to carry on. So, it's finding that balance and getting there. That's why I say it's an innovator's dilemma, and I mean that in the sincerest way. That we need to we need to find the levers to grow the business in the future without taking away from the core of the business.
Okay, cool. So thanks for your introduction and explaining us your mission. I said it in the introduction. Let's speak about the market and the consumers in the luxury retail. How do you see the market today? Because the COVID probably changed some behaviors on the market. How do you read it?
Well, I think that there's a variety of things going on, and we're still in the middle of it, right?
Mhm.
So it's maybe too early to have the full picture, but I think that we were already seeing customers move towards omni-channel experiences, right? So we talk about e-commerce, but I think that that's a bit of a red herring in the big picture, because you could talk about the percentage of revenue that is done on your website, but that might not be talking about the number of people who used Google Maps to come to your store, or the people who researched a product online before they came to your store, or who found out about that product initially from Instagram. So I think that we've been looking at that big picture for a very long time and seeing that basically every purchase in our stores is influenced by digital for many years, right? So now with COVID, what we have is this completely unexpected twist where the stores are actually physically closed. That completely took us by surprise, because even in our digital roadmap, we've been thinking about an omni-channel strategy, not a full online only strategy,
Mhm.
right? So that adds one particular challenge. I think though that what you end up having is you build services that meet the moment. Right. So whether that is, for us, that's availability. Are all of the products that our customers want to buy even available online? Do we offer our products to people in all the territories who want to buy them? We've been relatively slow to roll out e-commerce internationally. So, where a Farfetch or a Net-a-Porter serves roughly 200 countries, a lot of our brands are only serving 9 or 10 countries with e-commerce. So in a pandemic like this, or a situation like this where the stores are closed, we've been, really increasing that supply side, making sure that not only the products are available, but also the services. So can I do curbside pickup? Can I buy online but then return in a store?
Yes.
Do we offer all of the payment options that people want? Apple Pay, buy now, pay later, PayPal, et cetera. So that's why I point out that when I talk about the supply side of the equation, I don't just mean the product availability. I also mean the availability of services.
Yeah, sure.
So I think what's happened during this time, and it's not just LVMH, but people are really either meeting, demands they should have perhaps met 3 or 4 years ago, but they weren't the top priority, and they just became the top priority. Or they're adding new services, services that they hadn't thought of before and that might, fit their particular business. So I think that those changes won't go away. When we look at the market overall, we see really solid growth in e-commerce in January and February before the full lockdown. We see this huge drop even on e-commerce that was very temporary, and then a huge boost in e-commerce over the summer. And then that boost is sustaining through today. We're seeing week over week growth that is, very high double digits in all categories. For some brands, very high triple digits, because those brands are, like I said, supplying the market with new services they weren't supplying before. So that triple digit growth might be based on kind of underdevelopment last year, but still you're seeing, very strong e-commerce growth that we just expect to see sustained for the foreseeable future.
And what about the let's use an example. For example, the Chinese tourists coming in Paris. Usually they shop a lot. For example, on the Champs-Élysées, the Louis Vuitton store is full of Japanese tourists, and I guess they are looking. They are searching on the web before they join Paris the product they want to see, and they expect to live a huge experience on the store because this is Louis Vuitton based on the Champs-Élysées. So this kind of behavior is still no, it's probably not the same today.
The store foot traffic. I mean, there are places that it's still quite healthy. I mean, you'll still see lines in front of some stores in Paris, but it's certainly the foot traffic. If you just walk here on Avenue Montaigne, the foot traffic is not what it was. There's not the same number of tourists. People aren't even allowed into the country in the same way. And yes, for an industry that is so dependent on tourism, that certainly has an impact. The great thing about having a relationship with your customers that's digital, with our Chinese customers, we have relationships with them over WeChat. We have and those relationships go across borders. So a lot of what we're doing is making sure that we keep in touch with those customers, and if they maybe are not they're not traveling customers this year, can they be customers in country this year?
Yes.
Et cetera. I mean, look, this started for us last year with Hong Kong. Right, Hong Kong being a big luxury hub where tourism, fell through the floor, and I think that digital is definitely a tool in your arsenal of adapting quickly, because at the end of the day you have a customer, right, and the customer has an affinity to the brand, and you have an ability to talk to that customer.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's the last point I wanted to share with you and to speak about is. It's about the way you can talk to your customers. I spoke about clienteling. This is, the way you communicate with a CRM tool to your client. You offer an experience. How can you transfer the physical experience on the store, on the digital? We can speak about VR. We can speak about a lot of things. How do you see that? Because you need to offer another answer to your customers, because they can't be present on the stores, they can't travel to Paris to see something different, and probably digital is going to be a tool to
Absolutely, it already was even
probably
even pre-pandemic, and I think it's frankly a quite exciting thing. So. I apologize if I give a little longer answer, but I think hopefully it's interesting, because when I first came to the group, Ben Arnault had a quote that was, "Brick and mortar is still king," is what he said. And he and I spoke about that, and we changed the quote actually to "customer experience is king," because that's what he meant, right? When he said brick and mortar is king, he was right. What he meant was customer experience is king, and the customer experience in our stores is exceptional. And the customer experience online, where slow connections and big images and lots of forms to fill out, and you know what I mean, that was just not a good experience. Today, though, I think we've come a long way. If you think about the experience of simply going to Celine.com and clicking Apple Pay, even on Sephora.com, you can check out without ever seeing a keyboard, right? Very easily. I mean, things have come a long way, even just in the past 5 years. So I think that there's, and the other thing is that, as a consumer, you are accustomed to communicating with your friends and loved ones via text, et cetera. I think, we're going to communicate with brands the same way we communicate with our friends and family. And, whether it's my 13-year-old daughter or my 75-year-old father, I see them in person whenever I can. And in between time, we text. I think our relationship with our brands is exactly that. We will go when we can, and in between times, we'll communicate in other ways. We'll communicate with our phones, to be specific. I think that if you could easily say, here's the future of luxury. Luxury will actually have more sales associates in the future, but those sales associates will have better tools to communicate with the customers remotely, and then the stores will, as they already are, and they already have been. This isn't new because of the pandemic. In fact, maybe the pandemic has slowed down what was going on, but it will certainly come back. The stores will be even better. If you look at the trend over the last 5 years, it's been better stores, right? So the little corner that's just got some bags on a shelf, there's no need for that anymore. But the store, which is a very unique experience, and it's a destination, it's in a place you want to go on a Saturday, those are more plentiful.
I remember something you said in a previous interview about Le Bon Marché, and Le Bon Marché as an experience store, because because you said you can buy a pair of shoes, but also you can have a coffee, or you
listen
can
to vinyl, you can meet some friends. I mean, when you go at the holidays, there's gymnasts and, and it's funny, like, don't take my word for it because I'm biased, but, I was listening to a podcast with the CEO of the Hudson Bay Group. Is that what it's called? Hudson Group. And the interviewer asked her, so who's doing, actually it was earlier in the podcast, she was talking about experiential retail, and I was listening to her and I was like, she's talking about Le Bon Marché, like I can tell by what she's saying. But I also thought, like when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So I was like, that's just me, I'm imagining that she's talking about something else, but it feels like Le Bon Marché to me. Later in the interview,
so you were aligned.
Later in the interview, the interviewer asks her, so who's doing it well? And without hesitation, she said Le Bon Marché.
Wow.
And I was like, I knew it. But yeah, I think it's true. I think that, if you follow that notion where we will actually have more people, those people will have better tools to talk to their customers remotely. The stores that we have will be exceptional. And those stores, much like what you and I are doing today, will be places where you can broadcast from, right? Because, I grew up in a small town in the middle of America. I would, to see a Louis Vuitton store, I would have had to drive 5 hours or 4 hours to Chicago. The culture of Louis Vuitton didn't exist where I grew up. Today, the culture of Louis Vuitton exists in that town. It's called Instagram. Everybody can see exactly what Virgil did on YouTube, right? In the past, in Shanghai, and they did. Kids in those kind of places are aware of the culture of luxury. The stores can come right to them as well. The stores do now via you could say a combination of Instagram and e-commerce already gets you there. But there is something else coming, right, that feels more like FaceTime plus a luxury brand. That I don't know that it's VR, frankly. I don't think that but I do think that there is a way that, and I think the reason I don't think it's VR necessarily is I think it involves a human being. I think that you walk into a store or you call our brands on the phone, you talk to a person. And I think that human element is a big part of it. I think the more time that we spend, with screens in front of us, the more premium in-person and human experiences become. And I think that that's really one of the things that you're getting with luxury is you're getting human creativity, you're getting human craftsmanship, you're getting human connection. So even though, digital may be a conduit to that, my daughter wouldn't play Fortnite if her friends weren't on the other end of the screen, right? There's something about a lot of, if you think about it, anything that's ever been successful on the internet has been successful because of people, not because of technology. Even Google, which you could say is maybe, the geekiest, Google was better than the previous search engines because it understood consumer intent. It was still humans that were the X factor ingredient. If you look at Airbnb, if you look at eBay once upon a time, if you look at Depop, if you look at Etsy, if you look at, there's so many examples, and what we're really doing is, we're harnessing human power. And I think that there's something similar in luxury.
That's a great word to conclude our interview, because at the end you speak about human, and I think that's a good word to finish. Thank you very much, Jan, for coming to discuss the challenges and the lookout. The outlook, of the luxury market. Thank you very much, Comexposim, organizer of the events one-to-one retail e-commerce in Monaco and one-to-one digital marketing in Biarritz for the co-production of this episode. Thank you to all of you. And if you want to reach me, you can do it through LinkedIn. And if you listen this podcast on Apple Podcast, please leave 5 stars. Thank you very much, Jan.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you so much.